All right, welcome back, everybody. It is Thursday night. It's 7 p.m. I'm your host, Gino D'Angelo, located in beautiful Northern Michigan. Excited to come to you every Thursday to tell you what's going on in Northern Michigan. Every week we have a different topic. Sometimes we have different guests, but just try to make you as educated as possible about what is going on in Northern Michigan. And something I realized, and whether you're a new subscriber or new viewer, thank you for being here. One thing I noticed in the last couple of weeks is Northern Michigan doesn't have a really good news source. They've got a lot of the 9 and 10, 7 to 4 news, but I think there's a void for what's actually happening on the streets in Northern Michigan, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I hope to be able to fill that void for you. As always, this is meant to be an interactive experience, meaning if you have questions, if you have comments about something we're talking about something we've talked about before, something you've heard, something I say, please drop a comment below. And as always, let me know where you're listening from. It's a lot of fun to find out where our videos are reaching and who is listening to us. So drop a comment below, whether it's live or you're watching the recording. Let me know where you're watching from. And I'm super happy you're here. I appreciate all of you that show up. We had a record amount of viewers last week for Ian with One Trust Home Loan. So that was great. We had a bunch of people reach out about the lending process, and it makes me feel good that you are finding value in these videos. So before we jump into tonight's topic, we're going to talk about a couple of things. Northern Michigan has had record snowfall this year. And gosh, we were talking in the office today, and as far back as 2020, 2019, we haven't had a real winter in a very, very, very long time. And this winter has come true. And I don't know if you like winter or not. Drop a comment. Do you like winter? Do you hate winter? I think Northern Michigan is a better place when we have real winter. There's a ton of snow. The kids are getting snow days. We're on the ski hills. I was at Deanna Gritz, Merritt Island, Florida. Thank you so much, Deanna, for watching. Do you have any snow there? I know a lot of Florida is getting snow right now, so I'm curious. Are you in an area that's getting snow? Thank you so much for tuning in. A lot of people from Florida watch, a lot of people from Texas, Michigan. Seems like all over the country. But no, President's Day weekend, I was at the ski hill, and I have never seen the ski hills, and I've been skiing for a long time. I've never seen the ski hills in Northern Michigan as busy as they were last weekend for President's Day. I go to Boyne Highlands. Directly across the street is Nubbs Knob, and if you're familiar with Nubbs Knob, you turn off Pleasant View into the road that takes you to Nubbs Knob. And I guess there were people parking 1, 2, 3 miles away and walking into the ski hill. That's how busy Nubbs was. And we were at Boyne for a while until the lines just became too much, and we had to do something else with our day. So extremely, it's been a busy winter. We've got a lot of snow, and I really think the snow makes Northern Michigan come to life. But drop a comment. Do you like snow? Do you hate snow? I'd love to hear from you. A couple of things I want to share with you before we get into it. Tonight's topic is living on the water in Northern Michigan. Now, whether you live on the water, live near the water is a big reason people relocate to Northern Michigan. DR coming from Marco Island. Thanks for watching, DR. Do you have snow there? I know I should know this, but I don't. What parts of Florida have snow right now? I keep seeing Winter Storm Enzo has covered Florida with a little bit of snow. I've actually got friends in the suburbs of Atlanta, other realtors that are experiencing snow that they've never seen before. So no snow for DR. So that's a good thing. We're 90 miles north of Key West. Okay, so you guys are safe. Is it safe to say you're safe down there? I'll wait for his response. He's a longtime viewer. I like when he joins the lives. What we're going to talk about tonight is waterfront living. If you want to relocate to Northern Michigan and being on the water is important to you, what town should you consider? What should you avoid? What are you going to pay? What are the amenities? What is it actually like to relocate to Northern Michigan and live on the water? And this is timely because we're getting a lot of people. It seems like every year in Northern Michigan, at least this is my experience, the spring market starts a little bit earlier. We had a little bit of a lull right before the new year, even before that, right around the election. And then it seemed like once we got past New Year's Day, it's really gotten busy. And, myself and my team, we're personally very busy right now with people who are trying to find a home or take advantage of the winter market before spring hits and everything goes crazy and there's a ton of competition. So this is almost like the early bird spring market. I'm going to start calling it the pre-spring market because that is definitely becoming a definitive part of our market. So a lot of people, look, we had a house in Gaylord that we're selling to somebody that's relocating here from overseas. They have the house under contract, and we found out today there are multiple backup offers on this home. Meaning, luckily for them, they got in before everybody else was looking. But since then, the market has really picked up, and there are people waiting in line for this house. So super excited for my clients. Glad it worked out for them. I'm from Rochester Hills, Michigan. All right. Actually, I don't know if you know this or not, DR, but I actually went to high school, or not to high school. I went to college in Rochester Hills, Michigan, at Oakland University. I've got a lot of friends. My best friend went to Rochester Adams. I used to have a friend whose mom taught at Rochester High, Go Falcons. So I'm very familiar with Rochester Hills. I think it's a great area. The northern suburbs of Detroit. It used to be a lot of fun when the Palace was still there and you could go down the road to a Pistons game. That was one of the fun things I did. And I know I'm kind of getting off topic, but when I was in college, coming from rural northern Michigan, and it was very rural back then, it was so my friends and I loved that you could just go to a Pistons game. Like we used to go to the movies, and that was always a lot of fun from us. Yes, I live right across the street from Oakland. What's one of those suburbs down there? Or not suburbs, subdivisions. Beacon Hill, is that still a thing? Is that near where you are? So no, great. Thanks again for tuning in. And one thing I like about northern Michigan is from my dorm at OU, Oakland University, it used to be, I grew up in Indian River, went to college in Oakland. It was 250 miles apart, but it was 2 turns from my parents' house to my dorm. I used to turn left out of my parents' house, left again on 75, and then 2 turns off. So I guess 4 turns. It was 2 turns off of 75 to get to college in Rochester Hills. So again, we're going to be talking about Waterfront. Most people that live here or move to northern Michigan decide that being on or near or having the water be a part of their life is a huge reason that they move here. So I want to touch on that. We're getting a lot of people that are calling and asking questions on living on the water or living near the water, or, and look, there's a lot of ways, there's a lot of ways to live in northern Michigan and utilize the water without spending, buying an expensive home that's directly on the water. There's shared access. There's tons of public access, and sometimes you're able to get those houses with shared frontage or near a public access or something of that nature for a lot less than a house directly on the water. And let's face it, houses, there's still some areas, and we can talk about that tonight. There's still some areas where houses on the water are affordable, but a lot of the waterfront houses have gotten astronomically expensive in northern Michigan. I was just talking to a client today. I actually had a guy who was looking for a house on Lake Charlevoix a while back, and he ended up buying a boat slip in a yacht club and he's going to buy a boat, and that's going to be his home base because he just could not find a lot of value for his money. And it seems like, a few years ago, $1 million, $2 million, you could buy on any lake up here. Now that $1 million house is $3 or $4 million, and a $3 or $4 million second home is a lot different than $1 million home. But tons of people are snatching them up. If that's you and you're looking, I'd love to help you either way. So again, thank you for being here. Deanna just responded. So no snow near here. I live near Cocoa Beach on the Space Coast near the Kennedy. Spend some time on Mullet Lake every summer. Would like to become a snowbird. Deanna, thank you so much for joining. Mullet Lake is one of the most underrated lakes in northern Michigan. And to blow my own horn, a couple of years ago, I was a top selling agent on Mullet Lake from Petoskey, which is about on the west side of Mullet Lake, about an hour, maybe a little bit more. I love Mullet Lake. I think there's a lot of great aspects to it. There's a restaurant called the Hackmatack. It looks like a hole in the wall, but it's actually a really high-end fine dining restaurant. And it's fun after you've been on the lake all day, putting, some nice clothes on, pulling up in the boat, getting off and having dinner. The Sheboygan River, which connects Mullet Lake to Lake Huron, is a great river to traverse. In fact, I know a lot of people, now it's a long trip. I know a lot of people that go from Mullet Lake to underneath the Mackinac Bridge or even to Mackinac Island. Now, depending on the day, you need a pretty significant boat to do that. So, but it's definitely a fun trip. And from Mullet Lake, that's on the Inland Waterway, which is where I grew up. And I think it's great that you can go from Mullet Lake into the Indian River to Burt Lake to the Crooked River to Crooked Lake. I mean, that's a 50-mile stretch of boating that you can do. And it takes all day and gives you a ton of different options to boat. So TC, Ian Ashton, I live in TC. Thanks, Ian, for being a guest last week. Again, if you have any mortgage needs, make sure you reach out to Ian. I know a lot of you have. He's a great resource. He's not high pressure, and he'll definitely set you straight. I live in TC, but we keep our boat a torch, typical. For the type of boating we do, the torch chain of lakes is perfect. Absolutely. A lot of the lakes up here, whether it's Torch Lake, whether it's Mullet Lake, are part of a chain of lakes, which is something I think makes northern Michigan extremely special. It's not, I know a lot of states that have water, the lakes are either really small or they're not really lakes, they're more like reservoirs, but northern Michigan has great fresh water, which is awesome. So let's get into it. A couple of things I want to talk about first is the kids in northern Michigan have been so spoiled with snow days. I know Petoskey's had 5. I think Traverse City's had 5. My son goes to Petoskey, and he had Monday off for a federal holiday, Tuesday snow day, Wednesday snow day. I thought it could have been a snow day today, but I think at some point the superintendent said these kids got to go back to school, and then they have a half day tomorrow. So if you're relocating here with kids and they have not experienced snow days, that is definitely something they're going to be looking forward to. So make sure you tell them a little about that. I want to talk about the record before we jump into the lakes. I want to talk about the record snowfall. And then also something that's kind of a little bit fun is somebody reached out to me and asked, what determines a snow day? I was talking to a client that's relocating here. And as I mentioned before, they were talking, they're not used to snow days. So they're like, how does somebody determine, is there an index? Is there a temperature? Is there an amount of snow? So I Googled it, and Bridge, Michigan, coincidentally or not, we had one of the reporters from Bridge, Michigan on a couple of weeks ago. And he said, Michigan superintendent says wind chill, road conditions, staffing all play a role in deciding whether to call a snow day or a cold day. Superintendents say they want to stay open, but it won't risk student safety, which is awesome. Snow or cold days can throw off family routines. Yeah. So I love snow days. Not everybody does, because sometimes it creates a little bit of a scheduling issue if you don't have a place for the kids to go. But not only do we have snow days, we have cold days, and we've had record low temperatures this week. And I'm glad it only stuck around for a couple of days, but we actually had a couple of days this week that were -10, and on your iPhone, it tells you it feels like -20. That is too cold. I actually went snowboarding last Monday, and I've never experienced this before, but it was so cold that you couldn't go down the hill. Like, whatever the science is between snow that makes snow slow, that was definitely happening. My wife's grandpa sunk a rowboat in 50 feet of water at the north end. 60 years still there. You can see her clear as day. That's awesome. So if you're on Torch Lake, make sure if you're towards the north to look for Ian's grandfather's sunken rowboat. That's a fun story. Also, I'm going to share this with you. Let me share this with you. Stop share screen, present, share screen. Right here. For those of you, we've had a lot of people calling about relocating to Gaylord. So I thought this was interesting. MLive, which is a great local website, I subscribe to them. If you want to know what's going on in Michigan from more of a local perspective, or more of some, not necessarily local, but something that's actually in Michigan versus a bigger website, MLive is great. Northern Michigan ski town breaks record for its biggest snow day with 25 inches. Gaylord got 25 inches of snow in one day. And I think if you read this article, it says it broke the record, which was 17 inches on March 9th of 1942. When I read this, actually, a couple things struck me. One, that record survived that long. And two, March 9th seems late in the year to have a record snowfall, but 1942 is obviously a long time ago. People wonder, a question I'm often asked is, why do you get so much snow in northern Michigan? And it's lake effect. All of these beautiful lakes that we like to boat on or swim in or just look at in the summertime, those become nature's snow making machines when the winter hits, and it dumps snow on us. It's why Gaylord is called the snow belt. DR just said, I snowmobile Gaylord often great trails. So I grew up being a snowmobiler. For the longest time, we didn't get as much snow as we did when I was a kid. If you want great snowmobiling, go to Gaylord. They have something like 500 miles of groomed trails. It's easy on off to I-75. Really, the best, if you're a snowmobiler, the best snowmobiling in northern Michigan, I would say in the state, is probably the Upper Peninsula. But in this area, the best snowmobiling is that Gaylord to Indian River to like Sheboygan corridor. In fact, when I was a kid growing up in Indian River, we used to snowmobile from our front porch. You would take the trail system up to Mackinac City. You would load your snowmobiles. I don't know if they still do this. I think they do. On the back of like a trailer. They would trailer you across the bridge, and you could ride your snowmobile over to Mackinac Island. Now, that was a super fun experience. And in all the years and years I've been a snowmobiler, I That's one of the times I've never forgot. So definitely a fun thing to do if you're into snowmobiling. So, all right, we've talked about the weather, a lot of snow days for the kids. The market here is really coming back to life. I don't know if it's the changeover in presidency. I don't know if it's just getting into the new year. I don't know if people are absorbing the interest rates, but we have really seen an uptick in activity over the last, I would say, 2 weeks to a month. And it seems like every week we're getting our activities picking up more and more. And a lot of the agents, a lot of the top producing agents I'm talking to are saying the same thing. I'm genuinely still curious how this year is going to be overall. We still have a very low inventory. And I think until we see interest rates come down a little bit, it's going to stay that way, mainly because it's very hard for somebody to have a $500,000 house with a 3% interest rate, unless they absolutely have to. We talked about that last week. Have a $500,000 house with a 3% interest rate, go to an $800,000 house with a 7% interest rate. That is a pretty big gap that most people are just saying, hey, we're going to stay put. But like with everything, there's people retiring. There's people that are relocating here because this is where they want to live. There's still people selling their house for a lot of money in other places and choosing to relocate in Northern Michigan. Do you see a lot of DRS? Do you see a lot of the boomer generation retiring there are mostly, what is the demographic? That's a great question. I would say that's a great question. There are 3 types of people relocating to Northern Michigan. One has always come here, baby boomers retiring. That is, we have great healthcare, great climate, great community. There's a bunch of other retirees here. Northern Michigan, they can go to Florida in the wintertime. A lot of people do. A lot of baby boomer retirees retire here, hang out here in the summertime, in the winter, go to Florida. That's snowbirds. That's what everybody does. So there's that. There's into thirds. That's a third. Probably not. This is probably not equal third, but there's 3 types of people. That's probably more like, let's say 40%. We still have the people that are able to work remotely moving here. There's obviously a boom around COVID for that happening, but we continue to see people relocating to Northern Michigan who are able to work remotely. And then the third are just people that are moving here because they got a job in Northern Michigan. We're helping somebody relocate here. I can't say exactly where they're working, but there's a new development a little bit south of Gaylord that's going to be a big deal that somebody's coming here to work there. So as you see more development come to Northern Michigan, you're going to also see a little bit of a trend of people relocating here for jobs, which is something we've never really experienced. And we're going to talk about this in upcoming. I just recorded an actual video today, so make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss that, about Gaylord, Michigan, and how much development is going on there. There's some stuff I can't talk about yet, but it started with the Amazon facility, and now Wolverine Power is making it's controversial, and I'm not here to debate that. But I'm just telling you the facts. Wolverine Power is putting in a big solar field, and there's really the downtown is going through. There's the proposed mixed use change that's going to completely change downtown Gaylord. It just seems like as a lot of the stuff in Northern Michigan, in my opinion, it was almost like a little bit of a delayed attention. It seems like Gaylord, the delayed attention to Gaylord was how strategically situated it is. It has I-75 right through it. And so the corner of M32 and I-75 is, if you are familiar with Northern Michigan, when you're heading up north, when you get off on M32 and Gaylord, M75, that's how a lot of people go to Charlevoix, Boyne, some go to Traverse City. The whole northwest side of the state uses that. And then coincidentally, the east side, whether you're going to Alpena or, Roger City or Johannesburg, you're probably getting off there. That is a major thoroughfare in Northern Michigan. And for companies to finally realize that they can utilize that strategically to help their operations, it's one of those things that's kind of duh. I'm surprised it took you this long. Not to mention land is still incredibly affordable there. Houses for now, the values are certainly going up, but they're not nearly as expensive. I'm selling a house right now in Gaylord in Mishaway, which is a great subdivision, for a little under $500,000. And that house would be $750,000 in Petoskey or Harbor Springs. So there's still a tremendous amount of value there. Another question. Great. Thanks you guys for all the questions. I really like when these are interactive, and I certainly come with an agenda of things I want to talk about, but I'm genuinely do this to answer your questions, because I could just make a static video if all I wanted to talk about was the stuff that I want to talk about. But the reason that I like doing these lives and that I do them every Thursday at 7 is it gives you the opportunity to talk directly to me and some of the other people. Do you think home sales slow a bit in the winter up there? I'm wondering if you get a better deal in the winter. Absolutely. This is something we talk about a lot. Thanks for watching, all world. Let me know where you're tuning in from. I have started coining it as the winter discount or the January discount. I'm telling you, I just put a house under contract about a month ago that suddenly has 2 backup offers, meaning statistically speaking, I think if you could now don't it's not a good enough deal to rush out and just buy any house because there's a blue light special over Northern Michigan in January and you're going to get such a good deal that it doesn't matter. If you can find a house you like and you're ready to buy in January or even December, I would say from the holidays to the end of January, that is the best time to buy because there's a lot less people looking, meaning there's a lot less competition. And this year, especially, I saw people get some tremendous deals that I don't think they would have got if they waited 2 or 3 months. And I'm not a high pressure salesperson. If you've watched me for any length of time, you know I come from contribution and I'm just here to help you. But my belief is that January, maybe into February a little bit, is what I called a minute ago, the pre-spring market where I think you can find some tremendous values. We're near Cincinnati, but have a cottage on Otsego Lake. I have a fun fact, and this is a good example. I'm not saying this to brag. Speaking about Otsego Lake, I tell this story for a number of reasons. One, because I think this one story demonstrates a couple of trends in Northern Michigan with one instance. So hang with me for a second, but I've got a good story. I have these really good friends of mine who came to me a long time ago. They had a cottage on a lake in Kalkaska and just wanted to be closer to civilization. So they bought a house for like $400,000 in Harbor Springs, which back when you could buy a house at 400 with shared frontage, back when you could buy a house for $400,000 in Harbor Springs. They stayed in it for a few years, said, hey, we really want to get back on the water. What can we find? And we looked in Sheboygan County, Emmett County, Charlevoix County, and they looked at a bunch of houses. They ended up buying, and I think it's the record now, they bought a house for $1.1 million on Otsego Lake and love it. And this is a house that a lot of people think $1 million on Otsego Lake, that's a huge amount. But believe it or not, that house on Otsego Lake was still such a value to these people that they just loved it. So they're super happy. He's a really big snowmobiler. He's into ATVs. So talked to him a little while ago. They're super happy with their choice. So Otsego Lake is one of the most underrated lakes in Northern Michigan. So I'd love to hear your experience. Tell me something you love about Otsego Lake, because I think a lot of people watching aren't as familiar with it as they should be. All right, I've talked enough. Are you ready to get into tonight's topic? What it's like to live on the water, what you need to know, what areas you need to consider. And as always, drop a question in the chat and I'll pause and we can talk about anything you want to talk about. This is basically your show. I'm just here for you to answer your questions. And again, whether you're watching this live, whether you're watching this a replay, thank you so much for being here. I genuinely like doing these. And hey, if you're not a subscriber, it'd mean a lot to me if you subscribed. We've got a ton of great videos coming down the pike here at the beginning of the year that we've already made. That I'm excited to share with you. So make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single one of those videos. Bear with me. I wish they made this a little bit easier. So, all right, best waterfront towns. We're going to talk about Traverse City, Charlevoix, Petoskey, and Harbor Springs. There are other great waterfront towns, don't get me wrong, but when people are relocating, this is generally the areas they're relocating to when they're thinking about living on the water. Let me hide this banner so you can see what I'm talking about. So we're talking about the square miles of city limits with waterfront. It's 8.66 for Traverse City, 2.5 for Charlevoix, 5.29 for Petoskey. If you look on this map, we see it where it says 5.29. You see the steeple. That's right where my office is. My office is directly across the street from there. And then Harbor Springs is 1.3 square miles. Population, this is year-round population, just to give you an idea of how many people live here. This does not include, broke my rib on Otsego snowmobiling, running across train tracks. Awesome spot. Got to be more safe than that. I like snowmobiling. There's definitely, every year you hear about some injuries, and you definitely have to be careful on those things because you can get out of control. Hopefully drinking wasn't involved. So let's talk about the population. I get asked a lot, how many people actually live there full time? This number is going to change. We have a census report coming out pretty soon, but as of this recording, Traverse City's just under 16,000 people. Charlevoix's just over 2,300. Petoskey's just under 6,000. And believe it or not, Harbor Springs comes in at 1,270, which is about half, obviously, of Charlevoix and way less than Traverse City and Petoskey. So I don't think people understand just how small Harbor Springs can be. Talk about Traverse City. Let's talk about the schools. They have 11 public schools. They have a 19-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio. They also have 10 private schools, which have a 12-to-1 student ratio. And what's interesting about this is the difference. What I like about Northern Michigan is the difference between public schools and private schools. If you look at the main reason, there's a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons people like private schools versus public is the student-to-teacher ratio is usually a lot less. But what I think is interesting about Northern Michigan schools is it's not that much different. I mean, 19-to-1 versus 12-to-1, yeah. But I would argue 19-to-1 is still a good ratio to make sure your kids are getting the attention they need from the teacher. Charlevoix, there's one private school. Look, and this is what I'm talking about, the ratio. There's almost no difference in teacher-to-student ratio between the public school and the private school in a town like Charlevoix. Now, obviously, that's a lot smaller, so that plays a part of it. Petoskey has one public high school. They also have a private high school. They've got 4 public elementary schools and 2 private schools. That 2 private schools, one is kindergarten and middle school. One is the Catholic high school here. That's also very, very small. So even like this, I've had a lot of people come to, now I've mentioned before, my son goes to the private Catholic school here, but I've had a lot of people who send their kids to the public schools who say they feel like Petoskey public school is just as good as private school in some other areas because high quality education, small student sizes both play a role into that. There's one private school and one public school in Harbor Springs. Again, very similar student to teacher ratios. Talk about the food scene. If you're like me, you love to eat, and you're probably wondering if I visit these places, where am I going to have dinner, lunch, breakfast? And these are just a couple of my favorites. A couple didn't make the list, which I'll tell you about for watching. I love the Boathouse. It's up on the peninsula. I wish it wasn't such a long drive away, but it's a really cool experience. It's a great fine dining. They've got great steak, great wine, great seafood. Trattoria Stella, great Italian restaurant. Poppycock's is my favorite place in Traverse City to get lunch. In the summertime, they've got a watermelon salad that you have to try if you are ever in Traverse City in the summertime. You'll thank me. The private schools up north are elite. There are some incredible, yeah, absolutely. Every year it seems like the graduating class is sending kids to colleges all over the place, which I think is the best indication, not the best, but a good indication of the quality of education. The filling, gets back to this, the filling station, great place for pizza, Apache Trout Grill on the water, another great fine dining spot. Charlevoix, there's a couple of great ones. The Villager Pub is a pub. It's a little hole-in-the-wall bar right downtown, great location. One of my favorite bar type scenes to go to. Terry's Place in the Weather Vane. Weather Vane's a Stafford's restaurant. What I like about the Weather Vane is it's located right on the channel. So in this map actually shows it perfectly. Right where the word pub is, if you can see the word pub, the Villager Pub, right at the top of that B is where the Weather Vane is. A little bit further up. Actually, if you look at the weather, where it says Weather Vane, at the end of the E, that's where the Weather Vane is, which is actually coincident, but actually really funny. You can sit there, have dinner, have a drink, have a cocktail, have coffee, whatever you want on the balcony and just watch the boats go from, this is Round Lake. So you can't see my cursor, but the channel, that's obviously Lake Michigan. Just north of that is Round Lake. And just north of that is Lake Charlevoix. And this is what makes Charlevoix what I call a boater's paradise, because Lake Charlevoix has very deep water in some spots. So people have these massive boats that they're able to take from their house on Lake Charlevoix to anywhere in the world. But Smoke on the Water, The Landing, both great restaurants. DR said, now this is good info. My wife thanks you for the water, but you have to try it. Yeah, you have to. DR, what is your favorite restaurant in Northern Michigan? I feel like you're dialed in here. Anybody that's watching that lives in Northern Michigan, whether it's Gaylord, whether it's Traverse City, Petoskey, what is your favorite restaurant in Northern Michigan? And if I haven't heard of it, I'll look it up. And if I have, I'll give you my opinion. Petoskey, Pala Bistro, the Backlot, City Park, Chandler's Pour. These are all great restaurants. City Park Grill is the quintessential. If you've been to Petoskey and had dinner, you probably had dinner at City Park. The Backlot is somewhat new. It's a food truck. They've got a beer garden underneath, like an awning. So there's places you can sit inside where you can buy beer, cocktails, whatever. They have Happy's Tacos truck right next to the bar. And then they've got a bunch of food trucks. They've got a grilled cheese place. They've got a pizza place. They've got a place called Real Deal, which is like a fish and chips. And it's a super cool place. The only thing I ever complain about is the Backlot is directly across the street from my house. It's actually, directly across the street from my son's school, about a block away from my office. And I like going there, but usually when I'm downtown for lunch, it's because I'm working. And that is a place where people just go to hang out. And sometimes it's super hard to hang out while you're in work mode when people are in vacation mode, but definitely a cool spot. Chandler's quintessential spot for a nice dinner, nice drink. I can't tell you how many times it's a funny story. People will go to Chandler's. And if you don't understand Chandler's, it's like one of the most storied, famous restaurants in downtown Petoskey. It's also very expensive. So if you're not expecting it or not used to it, I've had so many people come in there and come back and say, wow, why was it so expensive? But it's Chandler's. It just is what it is. And that's just how it is. Talking about Petoskey, or talking about Harbor Springs, the New York is like the city park of Harbor Springs. Paper Station has an awesome ahi tuna salad. So if you like ahi tuna, you're going to love it. It's actually ahi tuna Caesar salad. So I love Caesar salad. I love ahi tuna. Put those things together and you have everything you need. The Pier is actually another Stafford's restaurant. If you're not familiar with Stafford's, they were just recently bought out by a much bigger company downstate, but they have a handful of restaurants and hotels in northern Michigan, and they've done such a good job with hospitality that it's become like a brand name. You know that if you're going to a Stafford's restaurant or a Stafford's hotel, that you're going to have a good experience because they really take customer service to another level. Activities, things to do in Traverse City if you're looking for something to do. There's the wine country, go up on the peninsula, Bonobo. There's a number of Black Star. There's a number of wineries up there. You can go wine tasting, and that's really a fun experience. The downtown Traverse City is one of a kind. One thing that I think Traverse City has done really well with their downtown is it's one way, meaning your traffic only goes one way, which I think makes it really just brings, I hate the word synergy, but it brings like a synergetic feeling to the downtown when everything is going one way. Obviously, tons of great restaurants, which we just talked about. They've got tons of great shopping, things to do. It's really a cool place to hang out. Pittsbitters, if you like baseball and you're in northern Michigan, you've got to check out a Pittsbitters game. People often ask me what level of baseball it is, and I should know this. Actually, I'm going to look it up now. What level of baseball is the Pittsbitters? It's in the Northwood League division. It is, I just saw it. The Pittsbitters, the Traverse City Pittsburghs are a baseball team in the Northwoods League, a collegiate summer baseball league. Yeah. So it's not minor league. It's not major league. It's just a bunch of college kids who find hosts to host them in the summer, and they just go play baseball. And I like going because the tickets are $10, parking's $5, a hot dog's $3, $4. It's the same experience you get at a bigger Tigers game or, a Major League Baseball game, but it's a lot less expensive and it's a lot easier to get to. Parking's easy. It's like parking at Walmart. You walk right in, and it's good baseball. And for a long time, the Pittsburghs have been a very good team. They won whatever their World Series is a couple of years ago, and I think it's a fun way to spend some time in the summer in northern Michigan. Turtle Creek Casino. If you like casinos, Turtle Creek is a good one. There's a lot of Native American land up here, which means we also have quite a few casinos. So if you like casinos, you like to gamble a little bit, as long as you keep it under control, we've got something for you. Cherry Republic. This made the list because I love going in there with my son and getting the free samples. I'm half joking, half not. Cherry Republic is in Traverse City, and they have a little one in Charlevoix. You go in there, and they have everything cherry related. They've got cherry salsa, cherry candy, cherry wine, and they have a ton of free samples, which draws a crowd and is a good way to test something before you buy it. Activities in Charlevoix. Believe it or not, Charlevoix, you might not know this, but Charlevoix has a castle. It is a legit castle. They have tons of weddings there, a few other events. They make their own wine. So if you're ever in Charlevoix, make sure you check out Castle Farms. There's a walking on the pier, which the pier is right in front of us. There's a dog park. If you have dogs. Great golf club, Belvedere, Charlevoix Country Club. Also, they've got a great municipal course, which a lot of towns here don't have. So they've got a great Charlevoix municipal golf course, great course. I know a lot of people that play there. Also, Earl Young has designed a lot of mushroom houses, and you can take tours of them. You can get in a little gem cart, which is an electric go-kart, and they drive around and look at all of the mushroom houses. In Petoskey, we've got the Great Lakes Center for the Arts in Bay Harbor, which is a great place to watch comedy shows. They have concerts. They have opera. They've got a tons of stuff, ton of community events there. We like the Cook's House in Trattoria Stella. That is so funny because the Cook's House comes up all the time. And I haven't been there, but my assistant Candace went there, and she thought it was a really interesting experience because, and DR, correct me if I'm wrong, when you go there, you feel like you're going into somebody's house. Is that true? Obviously, I love Trattoria Stella. I'm Italian. I love Italian. They have great Italian food. So while I wait for him to answer that, Petoskey, they've got 3 golf courses. They've got a casino. Crooked Tree Arts Center is a great place for performing arts. He said yes. So that's that's my bucket list. 2025, I've got to check out Cook's House. Activities in Harbor Springs. I think Harbor Springs, there's a couple areas in northern Michigan. I just talked about this today in a video. There's a couple areas in northern Michigan that I think have what I call amplified seasons, meaning everywhere in northern Michigan, everywhere in Michigan in general, and specifically northern Michigan, have 4 distinct seasons. But I think certain areas, I think in Gaylord, the 4 seasons are amplified because you get so much snow there. I think Harbor Springs, and this is probably what makes Harbor Springs, does the best job year round, meaning in the summer, Harbor Springs has always been, it started off as a resort town for the ultra wealthy. It has become a lot more affordable in some areas. So you've got, you drive through Wequatanting and it looks like you're on Mackinac Island. You've got the water right across you in the summer. It looks like you're in a Norman Rockwell painting. And then the winter comes and, sorry, let me back up. For summer, then the fall comes. You've got the tunnel of trees. You've got Pine Hill Farm, which makes the list. You've got the Deer Park. I think fall in northern Michigan is special. I think Harbor Springs does a really good job because between the tunnel of trees and Pine Hill Farm and Uncle Frank's and just being able to go to the apple orchards, I think that's a really fun experience. And then it heads right into winter, which is what we're experiencing right now. And this, especially when we get snow, the ski hills are great. The town comes to life. If you drove through Harbor Springs last weekend for President's Day, it would feel like summer. There's just a lot more snow. And instead of convertibles, you saw people with 4-wheel drive cars. So there's a ton to do in Harbor Springs if you're thinking about looking for an area to relocate. Now let's talk about some of the natural features. You're moving up north. Of course, you want stuff to do. Of course, you're curious where you're going to live. But you're moving up here probably because you like nature. You like the natural features of northern Michigan. So we're just going to run through a couple of these. Obviously, Traverse City is Grand Traverse Bay. Sleeping Bear Sand Dunes. If you've never been there, you've got to check it out. They're sand dunes in the form of like a bear laying down. It's a national park. Definitely something you have to check out. There's obviously the cherry orchards and Old Mission Peninsula, which we've talked about a couple of times. So yeah, make sure you go up to the peninsula, stop for some wine, get dinner at the boathouse. That is a very Traverse City day. The natural features that Charlevoix has, Mount McSaba Recreational Area. That's actually an old ski hill that people still use. It's very small. Lake Charlevoix obviously is one of the most premier lakes in northern Michigan. Fisherman Island State Park, great place to go fish. Depot Beach and Ferry Beach, I love hanging out there. I drop my kayak in the water and you just traverse the shoreline, and it's really a fun way to kayak. The natural features of Harbor Springs, obviously Little Traverse Bay, which again, Little Traverse Bay is written on this in Little Traverse Bay. So that's Harbor Point, which is one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the entire country, probably. The Tunnel of Trees, which you just talked about, Harbor Point, Thorn Swift Nature Preserve. One thing that I love about northern Michigan is there have been a lot of families who have donated land that the public is able to now enjoy. In fact, there was a golf course that the Off-Field family bought that they just turned into a preserve. So can you imagine buying an entire golf course and just letting the public go there? And I took my son to a fly fishing class there this summer, and I just thought to myself, this is just incredible that we live in a world where, now that was something that used to be an 18-hole golf course is a park for people to get to ride their bikes on or walk on. So definitely one of the things that I feel make northern Michigan special. Now let's talk about what it costs to live in northern Michigan. There are currently 76 listings in the city of Traverse City ranging from 179 to 3.8 million. Now, obviously that is a wide range when the average sale price last year was $518,000, just $3 over $518,000. Charlevoix, a little less activity. One thing that I talk about a lot in Charlevoix is something we deal with a lot in northern Michigan is just a wealth disparity. And there's actually a road in Charlevoix. And I think you see that a lot everywhere in northern Michigan, but you specifically see it in Charlevoix because there's one road where on one side of the road, there's like a $90,000 house. On the other side of the road, there's like a $10 million house. And I think that's just something that's really interesting because you generally don't see that, but you see it a lot in northern Michigan. And I don't think it means anything. It's just something worth pointing out. And also, there's a varying degrees of housing prices options in Northern Michigan. You can buy a house for 80 grand or buy a house for 10 grand. I'm sorry, $10 million. So there were 150 sales in 2024, which was up a lot from the year before with a $476,000 average, which again is probably double from what it was just 5 years ago. Mary Roy said, ready for summer so we can visit. Staying at Boyne Mountain and, of course, visiting Petoskey Harbor Springs. Well, like Barrelback is so yummy, and Bay Harbor. You can't go wrong there. That is the Northwest Michigan trip. So going from staying at Boyne Mountain, visiting Petoskey Harbor Springs, yeah, absolutely. Barrelback is a great restaurant. They've got great wings, great ribs. One thing that's super cool, whether you have a boat or you can actually rent a boat on Walden Lake, drive it around for the day, park it, walk up, go to get dinner at Barrelback, and that's a really, really fun experience. Insider tip, I think it's called Sweet something. I should know this, but summer's been gone for a while. I think it's called Sweets. If you get dinner at Barrelback, make sure you walk across the street and get ice cream because there's one of the best ice cream places in Northern Michigan directly across the street from Bay Harbor. I wish I remember what it's called, but it's called Sweet something. There are 72 active listings in Petoskey right now, ranging from 199,000 to 7 million. 28 there's a new condo development that has started a pre-sale. Those are ranging from 2.8 to 3.5 million. It'll be interesting to see what happens with those. I'm not ready to comment on it yet, but they've started building the foundation. I'm just genuinely curious how that development is going to go. It's called The Summit. It's directly across the street from Bay Harbor. So if you've been in Petoskey or near Bay Harbor recently, you've driven past this, and I'm just curious. I'm curious how it's going to go. I don't know if this area is ready to absorb a bunch of $2 million condos yet, but again, I hope they have success, as I hope everybody has success, and I'm just genuinely curious how that's going to go. Average sale price in 2024 was $616,000, which makes Petoskey an incredibly expensive place to live. But if you can afford it, if it falls within your budget, it's a great place to live. If you just don't quite want to spend that much, maybe you can afford it, maybe you just don't want to spend that much money, there are certainly other areas around here that still allow you to live near Petoskey and enjoy all the Petoskey amenities for a much lower price tag. Harbor Springs, very similar. Harbor Springs has always been one of the most expensive places to live in Northern Michigan. Over the last couple of years, that delta has definitely grown. The average sale in 2024 in Harbor Springs was just over 852, just under 853, but about $853,000, which is an incredibly expensive place to live. There are occasionally some cheaper options that come up. And again, there are areas that if you don't want to, even if you can afford it, or maybe you can't afford it, whatever, you don't want to spend that much money, there are areas that allow you to go into Harbor Springs all the time, such as a Lansing or Brutus, that are a lot less expensive, that you certainly get more bang for your buck from a price per square foot standpoint. Every time you make a video, Gino, it makes me long for our summer trips. They've got to get the Petoskey live cam back up and running. It's been down for like 2 weeks or better. Sounds like I got to fill that void. If I want to be your contact, if I want to be your real estate resource of choice, my office is right downtown. I'm going to talk to Dewan, our video guy, about what I need to do to put up a live cam, because I think that'd be a lot of fun. Yeah, we're right across the street from the water. I think that's a good idea. Maybe that's something I'm going to look into. So let's talk about the cost of living in relation to other areas. The cost of living in Traverse City is 4.2% lower than the U.S. average, but about 5%, a little less than 5% higher than the Michigan average. $75,600 average cost of living. Charlevoix is actually a lot more affordable to live in compared to the U.S. and compared to Michigan, and the average is $64,000, which is much less than Traverse City, meaning Charlevoix actually appears to be an affordable place to live. Petoskey is very similar, 8.5% lower than the U average. It's actually, Petoskey is equal. Living in Petoskey is just what it costs to live. So here's I want to tell a story about this. Here's what I think. I think Petoskey is equal to the Michigan average, meaning what it costs to live in Petoskey is what it costs to live everywhere in Michigan by an average. I do think the income here, and this is something I should have put on this slide, I think the income here is a lot less than the Michigan, not the Michigan average, but in similar areas. So I think that's the real difference. Also, Harbor Springs is equal to the Michigan average, but lower than the U.S. average. So apparently Michigan, and I don't know if it's due to weather or what it's due to, but Michigan is more expensive to live than some other places around the country. Now vote. Which one of these places would you choose to live in? would you pick Traverse City, Charlevoix, Petoskey, Harbor Springs? If you got to pick one of those four, obviously I've already voted because I live in Petoskey, but when I relocated from Indian River, Petoskey, I wanted to live in Harbor Springs. Back then, it was internet wasn't as readily available as it is now, and there was a couple of other reasons that made Harbor Springs a lot less convenient. But I think now living in Harbor Springs is a lot easier than it used to be, and I think that's why so many people are choosing to do so. So that sums it up. What do you think about those communities if you were going to live on the water? Well, again, whether you're watching this live or in the recording, if you could live in northern Michigan, where would you live? If sheerly based on utilizing the water. So Dr. Ian says TC, which obviously that's where he voted for. Ian, tell us, when you were debating relocating to northern Michigan, I know you had a job opportunity in Traverse City, but would you have, if you had a job opportunity in Harbor Springs or Petoskey back then, would you have taken it, or was Traverse City the only spot? Because I know your in-laws are there too. Would you have considered any other place besides Traverse City back then? So I'll wait for him to answer. Again, I'm here to answer your questions. That is what I wanted to talk about tonight. If anything has come up, I appreciate you all for watching, and we'll just leave the questions open. So I'll put the banner up to drop your questions in the comments. Again, it's really unfortunate that Waterfront in northern Michigan has become so expensive. It makes me feel for people, because I've talked to, some clients that have saved their whole life to be able to buy a house in northern Michigan, and when they were finally able to retire, the cost just drove up, and now they're not able to. But there are a lot of waterfront living options in northern Michigan that aren't super expensive, meaning there's deeded frontage, there's shared frontage. There's a lot of ways to live on the water in northern Michigan than just owning a $3 million house on Lake Charlevoix or in Bay Harbor or on Walloon Lake. So definitely food for thought there. Just to give you a little insight as to what is coming, we're going to continue to have guests on. Again, we had Ian last night with One Trust Home Loans about mortgage process. We're going to have an insurance guy. I really want to use these lives as a way for you to ask questions about what it's like to live in northern Michigan. Things like home insurance, home inspections, appraisals. We had Ian on for mortgages, stuff like that can really guide you as to what is the best decision for you. Are you going to love northern Michigan, or are you going to hate northern Michigan? I'm just here to be a resource, because I know that this will align with enough of you, and enough of you will choose to make the decision that I want to make sure that decision is right for you. And if it's not, that's great. There's plenty of other places to live, and I'm sure that you're going to find something that makes you happy. I actually could have moved anywhere up here, but we chose to, because I think a lot more year round. Yeah. It's interesting. This is an interesting conversation. I think Traverse City is great. I think this area, even in the last 10 years, since I've been a quote unquote adult, have changed so much that I wonder, if I went back in time, if I would make the same decision of where I relocated. I obviously love Petoskey. I love the schools. I love the water. I love the access to skiing, boating. I've always liked this town. Traverse City has certainly gotten busy. It's always been busy, but it's a lot busier now. But a lot of people either want the quiet small town feel like Petoskey or Harbor Springs or Charlevoix, or they want the action. They want the amenities. They want everything Traverse City has to offer, which is why Traverse City remains to be one of the relocation destinations that people choose. So back to what I was talking about, we've got a lot of cool stuff coming up on the channel. We're incredibly grateful for how many of you have subscribed, that comment, that come to these lives every week. That it's really grown the channel, and it's helping me make really good videos. We've got some stuff coming up on location. We've got one coming up where we relocated. We're doing an entire video at a ski resort to tell everybody, what it's like to live in a ski town in the wintertime. We've got a lot of cool stuff coming from the summer. So I'm definitely excited for what's ahead. Thank you so much for being on the journey. Again, if you're just watching this for the first time or you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. It would mean a lot to me, and helps the channel grow and helps to reach more people that need this information. And again, I do this for free. I do this to be a resource. I do this to hopefully build a little bit of trust and build a little bit of a relationship that if you decide to relocate to northern Michigan, you're going to give us a call. So if you don't have any other further questions, I will let you go for the night, and I will see you next Thursday at 7 p.m. Thank you.